All right, greetings everyone. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about a former head of state. I'm going to talk a little bit about General Idi Amin Dada. He's one of the most misunderstood head of states, I think. And the amount of controversy that surrounds the person known as Idi Amin is too much to mention in any one particular segment of any kind of podcast or documentary or any such thing. I mean, this guy was known to have eaten people. Well, of course, he's known to have killed many, and I mean, the controversies go on and on and on. Among the many things that he was known for or believed to have done was the expulsion of the Asians beginning in 1972. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit here. Now, you know, there's always an old saying that every story has two sides. And oftentimes we've heard of the Asians being expelled. And whether you agree or you disagree with what he did, that's up to you. That's your personal opinion. And I'm not discussing your opinions or what you feel or any such thing. But let us look at the facts that stood at that time. Now, the Asians that were living in Uganda at that time, most of them, if not all, were British citizens. And I'll get back to that part in a minute. But they were British citizens. They had British passports. And secondly, those Asians, otherwise known as East Indians, or in some cases they were referred to as coolies, they were living in a country and they were doing businesses. In fact, they had started owning most of the important businesses in that country at that time. And while they were doing business there, they were not banking their monies in Uganda. Some of them were sending their monies to India, and some were sending their monies to England. But for the most part, I'm sure there were a few who were banking their monies in Uganda. But for the most part, they were not doing that. What would that lead to? That would begin to lead to a major challenge for that country's economy. Be it any country, your economy would have to be totally, absolutely robust to be able to withstand that type of drainage. So, like any governments would do, they would begin to look into the business affairs of this particular group of people. Idi Amin's government would have been no different from any other government. Okay? Because that's what governments do. They snoop and look around into the affairs of groups and individuals. So they started investigating the Asians, investigating their business practices, investigating what they're about. So with these two things in mind, meaning that they are not Ugandan citizens, Idi Amin made an offer to them. You can become Ugandan citizens. And they declined. He made a second offer. You have to start banking your money here in this country. If you're doing businesses and living here, you got to bank your money here. They also declined. That's what led to the expulsion. Now, here are two more features that I would like to talk about before I close. Those Indians that were living in Uganda, They are British citizens, like I said before. But aside from that, they were sent by Britain to live in Uganda because of the fact that Britain had colonized Uganda like they had colonized so many other places. I want you to keep this in mind because I'm getting to something here. Britain had colonized Uganda like they had colonized so many other places. And as a result of that, Britain had this superiority complex of sending their people to, go here, go there, do this, do that. You can live there. Oh, yeah, you can live, like that type of stuff. So they had sent a lot of these East Indians to live in Uganda. Just like how the British also had sent European Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, to live in Palestine. They were the ones who had encouraged the Zionist Ashkenazi Jews to move from the Ukraine, from Russia, from this part, that part, and to live in Palestine. Why? Because the British had some control over Palestine. Now, keeping in mind that the British had also suggested that some of these Ashkenazi Jews can also live in Uganda. But they refused because they wanted Palestine. Palestine is what they had their minds on. So here is something to think about. Uganda was a prime choice for the Jews, or the Zionist Jews, may I say it that way, for the Zionist Jews to live and reside. Uganda was a prime choice, followed by Argentina being the second prime choice, followed by Guyana as a third choice, but not a prime choice. So all of these places were considered homes for the Jews to live in. But Palestine became the one that they chose. Because as what Theodore Herzl would have said it, Palestine is where we want to be. Now, think about this. If the Indians, the East Indians, going back to that subject, if the East Indians were allowed to stay in Uganda, and let's just say the Ashkenazi Jews were allowed to live in Uganda, what you think Uganda would have looked like? What do you think Uganda would have looked like? And keeping in mind, while this is happening in Uganda, or could have happened in Uganda, it was already happening in South Africa. Because it was the same year, 1948, when Israel was declared a state, that South Africa became an apartheid state as well. Think about all of these things, right? Did Idi Amin make a bad decision, or did he make a good decision? Now, it is not a good thing for the lives of people to be disrupted and be uprooted. But if you can, in the comment section, let me know, based on what you just heard, did Idi Amin made a good decision or a bad decision? Thank you for listening, And as I would always greet you in the greeting words of peace, Assalamu alaikum.